What's happening, everybody? On today's show, head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks, Shane Beamer, will join the show. We'll talk with him about diving deep into the transfer portal this offseason, some of his guys heading into the NFL draft, and what he thinks about his team's schedule for 2022. We'll also go around the conference as Kirby Smart, Jimbo Fisher, among others, talking about their team going through spring practice. Also, an Alabama wide receiver no longer on the roster. We'll discuss that as well. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. Great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. We got plenty to get into. Let's do it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Intercepted.
Takes the handoff.
What a catch.
Around the conference.
And we start over at Georgia as Kirby Smart promoting competition at that quarterback spot. Georgia about 9 practices into the spring, of course, getting ready for their G-Day scrimmage coming up next week. There's been a lot of talk that Carson Beck has looked really good at the quarterback spot, along with Brock Vandagriff, Gunnar Stockton, all those guys getting reps during spring practice. But on Tuesday, Kirby Smart, he gave some high praise for Stetson Bennett. He said, look, Stetson is playing the best football he's played since he's been here. I want him to continue to get reps so that he continues to grow. On the defensive side of the ball, Kirby Smart talking about Jaylin Carter and said, look, he's looking for more out of him on the defensive line. Kirby said it's a matter of can he play with maximum intensity and sustain? We need him to play more snaps this year. Can he do that? Can he go through offseason workouts and get to where Trayvon Walker, Devontae Wyatt were able to play so many snaps last year? So Jaylin Carter, a guy that they're going to turn to for a lot of leadership this year on that defensive line. Meanwhile, over at Alabama, wide receiver Agiye Hall came with a lot of hype, particularly last year in the spring game. Made some outstanding catches, played in 7 games this year as a freshman, but didn't catch a whole lot of passes. Caught just 4 balls for 72 yards, but apparently, as of Tuesday, he was not listed on Alabama's online roster, and media folks at Alabama practice trying to confirm what is going on with Agiye Hall. Hall took to Twitter to issue a cryptic tweet saying, "News to me," retweeting an article that said he was no longer on the roster. So, look, former 4-star receiver, is he going to play for Alabama this season or not? We will see. Of course, Nick Saban has issued messages to Agiye Hall and his other younger receivers through the media. Agiye Hall has tweeted cryptic things in the past, so this may just be the next chess match between Coach Saban and Agiye Hall, but would be a big loss to an Alabama receiving corps that is looking for leadership with a very inexperienced group, really outside of Jermaine Burton, heading into next season. Over at Florida, they continue their spring practices, and Jay Bateman is a guy enjoying his time on the Florida Gators staff as the inside linebackers coach, and he said he's got one of the best rooms on the team. He said he's impressed with QB Williams and Derek Wingo. Said he's seen a lot of good pass rush skills out of those guys. The coaching staff also talking about DeJuan Black, says they see a role for him as he gets more and more comfortable in their system. But as for the defense overall, Bateman said Florida going to be very multiple on defense. Their co-defensive coordinator, Patrick Toney, he said is very bright and has a good game plan. So we will see if this Florida defense can be improved this year. Now, just a quick note on Florida's spring game coming up next week. It'll be a night game. The team will split into 2 teams. They will run out of separate tunnels using the home and visitor locker rooms. They will feature 4 quarters in the game, a 15-minute halftime, and a running clock. So a little bit like a game, and we'll see if the competition with Billy Napier's staff makes this team even better. Over at South Carolina, Shane Beamer, of course, coming up in just a few minutes here on the show. He was talking on Tuesday about his latest spring practice, and he said the offense had way too many turnovers in their latest scrimmage. He did credit the defense and said there were players out there with short-term injuries, but he said defensively, I thought we really tackled well. It really stood out. A lot of times you see missed tackles and just kind of sloppy play. He said we tackled really well, especially in the open field. Beamer has also praised his pass protection, especially with the first-team offensive line. Let's see if Shane Beamer's O-line at South Carolina can protect Spencer Rattler if he is indeed the starting quarterback for them this fall. Meanwhile, over at Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher, he's got a quarterback battle on his hands, and he's got Haynes King, who was the guy who won the starting job a year ago before he got hurt, and Zach Calzada took over. He's now at Auburn. Former LSU quarterback Max Johnson is there, and of course, incoming freshman Connor Wegman. Well, on Tuesday, Fisher talked about the battle, said all three guys have played well so far. He said, I don't think there's any doubt this battle will continue into the summer. All three guys have had their moments. He said he expects the battle to go into the fall. He went on to add all three quarterbacks have been making plays. He praised the freshman Connor Wegman, saying he has a calmness and a maturity about him, doesn't get overwhelmed by the moment. Haynes King was named the Aggie starter a year ago, like I said, before he got suffered that season-ending injury in week 2. I would say Haynes King is the incumbent right now, but we will see if Max Johnson and Wegman can push him. Meanwhile, over at LSU, linebacker Josh White, he entered the transfer portal recently after spending 2 years at LSU, and he's going to be joining a familiar face. He announced he is heading to Baylor, where he'll play for former LSU defense coordinator Dave Aranda. So Josh White going from LSU to Baylor. Meanwhile, Arch Manning continues to be one of the highest recruited quarterbacks out there, and On3 Sports putting out some recruiting tidbits saying after visiting Athens, Austin, and Tuscaloosa the past few weekends, the On3 recruiting prediction machine gives Alabama a slight edge over Texas and Georgia to land the 5-star quarterback Arch Manning. They have Alabama with a 35.6% chance, Texas at 31.4%, Georgia at 27%, and Ole Miss still in the mix at 3%. So none of that really means a whole beans ultimately when it comes to Arch Manning's decision. I stood by for the longest. I think he's going to Texas. Again, Texas will be in the SEC eventually anyway. So either way, Arch Manning will be playing in the SEC at some point. But they tend to think Alabama caught a little bit of the momentum as of late. We'll see. On SEC basketball news, Jabari Smith over at Auburn, he officially declared for the NBA draft on Tuesday morning. No surprise there. He is expected to go top 5 in this draft. Could be number 1 overall. We will see. Over at Arkansas, Jaylin Williams, he's putting his name in the draft hat, but he will not sign with an agent, so that will keep his college eligibility intact. Meanwhile, his teammate, Audius Toney, he is foregoing his extra year of COVID eligibility. He took to Instagram to announce he is going to the NBA draft and will sign with an agent. Over at Kentucky, Keon Brooks, veteran forward. He played in 80 games, made 42 starts for the Wildcats the last 3 seasons. He wrote this week he is going into the NBA draft, but he will not sign in with an agent, so that will keep his possibility to return to Kentucky. And Kennedy Chandler, Tennessee Volunteers, played great at this point guard spot for them this year. He is going to test himself at the next level, announcing Tuesday afternoon he is entering the NBA draft. A lot of people have him graded somewhere in the middle of the first round, so expect Kennedy Chandler likely to go. And lastly, Georgia, man, their roster turnover is starting to look a little bit like LSU's. This week they lost freshman guard Christian Wright to the transfer portal, also lost Tyrone Baker and Cam McDowell, all entering the portal this week for the Georgia Bulldogs. And there you have it. That is the latest news around the conference. When we come back, we're going to talk with the head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks, Shane Beamer, going to join us right after we tell you a little bit about our friends over at Built Bar. Of course, tons of different flavors going on, and always something for everybody over at Built.com. Built Bars are low in calorie, high in protein. Replace those candy bars with Built Bars because, frankly, they're better for you. A candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. you go to built.com, you can see all the stats available there. 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs, 17 grams of protein packed into Built bars. Go check them out. From the mint brownie to coconut almond, there is something for everybody. If you go to their website, built.com, and you find something you like, you can use our promo code LOCK15. That's going to get you 15% off your order. Use our promo code LOCK15, get 15% off over at built.com. Roll along here on Locked On SEC. Appreciate you guys for making us your first listen every day. And now we're a pleasure to be joined now by the one and only head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Still a young man in the coaching game, but just a year in as a head coach, off to a really good start. Shane Beamer joins us now on the show. Coach, how are you? Good to have you on the show with us.
I appreciate it, and appreciate you calling me a young man too. That means a lot. I like the way you think, though. But appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely, Coach. You're the head football coach now in Columbia, but I got to say, I guess it's a little crazy. You're not even the top dog on campus right now. Dawn Staley and the women's basketball team winning the national championship. She's the king of that campus right now. I guess that's maybe a little humbling for the football coach to take a backseat to another sport, right?
You're exactly right. I mean, congrats to them and the season they had and what she's done in her time here. I was an assistant coach here previously when we hired Coach Staley, and to see how she's built that program and what they've done, it's been really awesome. And I consider it it's an awesome resource for me to have a coach like Coach Staley here on our campus that has won now 2 national championships, to have an athletic director that was our baseball coach and won 2 national championships as a coach here. So there's some great coaches here in this athletic department, and I'm just trying to keep football moving in the right direction.
Coach, speaking of the college football, I mean, look, this is a whole new world we're in now with the transfer portal. A lot of coaches like it. I'm sure some don't, but either way, you have to adapt. How different has this been for you adjusting to it and constantly having to re-recruit the guys who are already on your roster?
Yeah, no, it makes it tough in the sense that, your roster essentially is always in flux. It's never necessarily, locked in as for what it's going to be. I mean, somebody could, as I do this interview, I mean, somebody could walk in my office while I'm doing this interview and tell me they want to go somewhere else and they want to transfer, and that's just the way it is. And every college coach understands that part of it now as well. And, you get it, but the thing we try and do is just have a program here that, players want to be a part of and don't want to leave and to have a fantastic experience here on and off the field and feel like we are. And that's what we're just trying to continue to do each day. I'm a relationship person. This program, these players here know that we care about them as people first. And a lot of guys are having some great experiences here but you understand it's just part of it. And you just try and do what's best for your program day in, day out.
Talking with Coach Shane Beamer. And Coach, speaking of the transfer portal, obviously Spencer Rattler coming in at quarterback. He's a guy you had a relationship with at your time at Oklahoma. And so it makes a lot of sense to bring him in. But, look, he's grabbing a lot of the headlines out there, but you guys have done a great job of bringing in some other big names in the transfer portal, like running back Christian Beal-Smith, big tight end Austin Stogner coming over from Oklahoma. He's finishing up. Wide receiver like Antoine Wells. It's an interesting dynamic because in just one offseason, your entire starting lineup on the offensive side could look completely different from just a year ago. So in that sense, it can be really good because it could take you from having spots with weaknesses to suddenly being an instant contender.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that I'm excited about too is we've got a lot of players that are coming back as well off last year's team. I mean, we've got our, leading receiver in Josh Van that didn't have to return that chose to come back. We've got our entire offensive line returns, our entire receiving core returns, so we've got some great players that are coming back to the program that could have left early for the NFL or whatever it may be. But then we've also added to it, and that's what excites me is we're deeper, at all the skill positions and whatnot, the people on offense that touch the ball. And we have a ways to go. By no means if we have Rob, we're always trying to make our roster better. But certainly when you have a chance to bring the people back that we brought back and add some pieces, some impact type guys, it certainly makes you feel better about the depth that you have at each position all across the board, a little bit more so than you did last year.
Coach, you're a guy who's certainly paid your dues over the years. You've coached in dozens of different spots coming up as an assistant. I know there's some people out there who really enjoy being assistant coaches and are fine never being the head guy. But I think the thing we hear from some of those guys is, who finally make the jump to head coach is they miss certain aspects, things like not coaching a position with guys one-on-one anymore. What are some of those things, I guess, you miss now being the head man?
What you just said, I certainly miss, having my guys that I coach and going into the position meeting room. I've coached running backs, I've coached defensive backs, I've coached tight ends. So you certainly miss going into that room when it's just your group and you're in charge of the group. But the way that I look at it, I get the opportunity now to do that with, instead of just the 5 or 6 guys at my position, I get to do that with 100+ guys on the football team. And like I said, I'm a relationship person, so I try and, have great relationships with everyone on our team. I try and get to, meetings all the time and bounce around to all the meetings, offense, defense, special teams, where, you have that experience. I don't want to sit in my office all day and just, be a head coach that sits in his office by himself and then comes to practice. I'm never going to be that guy. So I look at it that, all those great relationships that I had with the players that I coach, I get to do the same thing now, but I get to do it times 10.
More with head coach Shane Beamer in just a second, but this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local auto parts chain store to stock all the parts that you need. Why would you endure crazy questions, intimidating questions from some of those guys working at those stores? Look, you have computers with access to rockauto.com in your home and in your pocket. Save time and money when you use Rock Auto. You can choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% less than going to some of those auto part chain stores or car dealerships. When you use Rock Auto, they are a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are always reliably low for every customer. They got everything you can need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go check out their easy-to-use catalog and explore them today. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, and make sure you're right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know that we sent you. An amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. Thank you guys again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And jumping back into it, our conversation with Shane Beamer, head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks. And Coach, I know you guys just had your pro day a couple of weeks ago. You had some really talented guys heading into this draft, like running back Kevin Harris, who had a great career, led the SEC in rushing just 2 seasons ago. Jalen Foster, defensive back we had on the show a few weeks ago. He's excited about going to the next level. Kingsley Enagbari, who we had on the show back at SEC Media Days. He had an outstanding career. Who are you most excited to see what he does at the next level with all these talented guys heading to the pros?
Man, it's a good question. There's a lot of them that I think their best football is ahead of them. And Kevin certainly had a fantastic 2020 season and finished up on a strong note in 2021. And then JJ, you mentioned, and, an All-American and the MVP of our football team that's voted on by the players was Jalen Foster, a fantastic defensive back that, if you look at him, doesn't quite fit the measurables, but I wouldn't count against him. And it's a lot of guys that I'm excited about, to see that I think their best football's in front of them. And pro day went well. It was fun getting to watch them work, and excited to follow their careers now going forward to the next level.
Coach, I was going through your bio a little bit, and I just could not ignore the fact, of course, you played a little wide receiver in college, but you were a very successful long snapper in your college days. I'm so intrigued by the long snapper spot because, look, it's a skill. It's a certain skill that it takes to do that. Is that a skill you can learn and teach guys how to do, or is that something I guess you're just kind of born with?
I think it's hard to just teach somebody if they don't have just like that natural skill to begin with. You can certainly improve. You can certainly get better at it, but it's not easy. It's not easy, bending over, putting the ball between your legs, and then being able to fire it back there in 0.7 seconds or so accurately, with rushers across from you. But I think you got to have a general skill set to be able to do it. I mean, I remember I was in 7th or 8th grade and was just out, snapping in the backyard with my dad. And my dad told me, like, actually, you're pretty good at this. You got some ability. You need to keep working at it, and gives you an opportunity to maybe, do something in college and get on the field. So, that's kind of how it started with me. But you can certainly improve the technique and craft, but I think it's hard if you're starting from ground zero and don't have a little bit of feel for it.
Well, just a little more on that, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on a long snapping conversation, but it is a spot that intrigues me. How do you recruit that? Is that something you find a guy at another position who can double up as a long snapper, or is that a spot that's worth spending a full scholarship on just for somebody to do the long snapping?
No, great question. A little bit of both. We certainly have, like a lot of schools do. We have camps in the summertime where we're able to get prospects on campus that, snappers, kickers, punters, along with every other position that comes through our camp. And you can see guys in camp and get a chance to evaluate them and watch them. You certainly go after the best ones in the country. You watch high school tape. First and foremost, you got to have accuracy, and then you've got to have the velocity to get it back there in time as well. And then we certainly look for athleticism. College rules are different than the NFL. In the NFL, the snapper can't go downfield until the ball is kicked. And they're involved in protection. College-wise, you can go downfield as soon as the ball snaps. So the more athleticism you have at the position, the person that, is an athlete and isn't involved in protection and can just snap and get downfield and be an extra cover guy, that is a huge asset in college football. And then once you get guys in here that, you bring in here as snappers, certainly you want to develop as many guys on your own team as you can and find out, okay, did you snap in high school? You maybe are starting tight end, but did you snap in high school? Or do you want to try? Because you can never have enough. And, like a lot of positions when we or a lot of teams and programs, when we travel to SEC away games, we're only allowed to take 70 players. Now, that's more than the NFL has on game day, but we can take 70 players. So the more guys that you have that can do multiple things, the better it is for that travel squad that you take to away games.
Just a couple more for you, Coach. Again, we're talking with Shane Beamer, head coach of South Carolina. Your spring game, the Garnet and Black game, is coming up a week from Saturday. Of course, folks could stream it on the SEC Network Plus, on the ESPN app. I'm sure the SEC Network is going to replay it a bunch. But you as a head coach, what can you take away from a spring game? Because I guess to a lot of fans, they view it as basically a glorified scrimmage. But is there anything you as a head coach can really get out of or take away from a spring game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I love just being able to see, how guys perform. I don't know if it's quite the big stage, but certainly it's different than just being out on the practice field where there's no crowd. Some guys, when they come out there and quote unquote the lights come on, they elevate their game, and some guys unfortunately maybe go the other way and don't. So I'm just eager to see, particularly with some of our new players and young guys, freshmen, some transfers. I mean, that spring game, a lot of these guys are going to be playing in front of the biggest crowd they've ever played in front of. whether they're a transfer from a smaller college or a high school player that just got here. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how some of these guys perform in front of a crowd, and you can certainly take that from that and really get a better sense of who you can depend on going into the season.
Last thing for you, Coach, looking ahead to the 2022 football season, and I'm just looking ahead at your schedule. I kind of like how your schedule sets up. Of course, it's not easy. I mean, you get some tough opponents at home, like Texas A&M, Tennessee, the reigning national champs, and the Georgia Bulldogs, and you have some tough road trips at Arkansas, Kentucky, Vandy, and Florida. But I know you have to have that 1 week at a time mentality. But do you like how this schedule sets up for you guys? Because I don't know, I feel like if you guys come out of the gate strong, this could really set up to be a special season for you.
Yeah, it's I know it's coach speak, but it's not. When we get to that point, it'll be so focused on the first game, which for us is Georgia State, and you know that when you're in this conference, you play the best of the best every single week, and for us specifically, we're in the SEC East, but our crossover opponent is Texas A&M. And then our in-state rival is Clemson. So I don't know of any school in our conference that has a tougher schedule year in, year out than what we face because of who we play in the West, and then our in-state rival, being one of the top programs in the country. But certainly, every year is different, and every year will be a challenge. But, love our home schedule, and obviously have some tough away games. But, come out to that part of the country in week 2 to play the Arkansas Razorbacks, and then come back week 3 to play Georgia. And we'll take it. I know it's coach speak, but one week at a time, and we'll see what happens.
He is Coach Shane Beamer. Coach, really appreciate the time, man, and thanks so much for joining us.
No, I appreciate it. Anytime you want to have me on, I'd love to. We talked long snapping, and I'm forever a fan of you guys. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Coach. That is Coach Shane Beamer there of the South Carolina Gamecocks joining us, and appreciate him taking some time out. And man, I keep saying it. South Carolina Gamecocks, I think, are one of those teams that's going to make a big jump this year and improve, get better, and really surprise some people. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. Now you can go make your second listen. Check out the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. Ryan Tracy and Eric Crocker bringing the NFL Draft to life with insight analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC.